Charisma here. Get my t-shirt below. Guaranteed to raise your charisma by at least +1.
Just in time for Halloween, I give you 3 D&D encounters based on my new Quest Givers module, Professor DungeonMaster's Frankenstein. Today on DungeonCraft. Welcome to DungeonCraft. I'm Professor DungeonMaster, and this channel is about playing the ultimate game of D&D and other tabletop role-playing games.
And I'm Deathbringer. Level up your game by subscribing and click the bell icon so you'll be informed whenever we upload new content.
I love Mary Shelley's classic novel Frankenstein. I've taught it many times in the classroom, and I've adapted it for role-playing games more than once. The first time was in Dungeon issue 63, I think somewhere about there, as Jigsaw, which I wrote with Christina Stiles, who's gone on to be a prominent role-playing designer on her own, and Tony DiTerlizzi did the art before he was Tony DiTerlizzi, so that was a big thrill back in the 90s. But recently I returned to the source material with Quest Givers, DMG, and DM Scotty, and this version of Frankenstein is even more faithful to Mary Shelley's novel. And I'm going to go over 3 encounters from that module today, which you could drop into any D&D campaign. It doesn't matter whether it's 5e or OSE, it's system agnostic. The plot, just in case you don't know, a medical student named Victor Frankenstein creates a creature out of corpses, brings it to life using a chemical formula and an electrical battery. Then he promptly abandons his creature because it looks hideous. The creature returns years later as Victor is preparing to get married and demands Victor create him a mate, because society fears him. That's where the scenario begins. Victor's fiancée, Elizabeth, hires the player characters to investigate Victor's strange behavior. She fears he's having an affair, but what he's really doing is sneaking off to a secret laboratory where he's putting the final touches on a female creature. When the PCs confront Victor, he confesses to them and hires them to kill the original monster. That's when the twist occurs. The creature confronts one of the player characters when they're alone and tells his side of the story. He is a creature, not a monster. True, he's filled with rage and he did murder Victor's younger brother, but that's only because Victor made him look hideous and then abandoned him. People fear and attack him solely because of his appearance. This is why the creature wants a mate. He believes if he has a mate who looks like himself, she will fall in love with him, and he promises they will run away together and never be seen again. And he pleads with the player characters to help him attain what he believes is his only chance at true love. The first encounter is a role-playing encounter, and I don't mean with the creature. That's just the catalyst. The role-playing is going to occur when the player characters talk with each other, because there's going to be a debate over who is the real monster. Is it the creature or Victor? On one hand, the creature has killed Victor's brother, an innocent child, but on the other hand, he's sorry for it, whereas Victor thinks he's done nothing wrong. He's really an arrogant jerk. What the creature wants is perfectly reasonable. He wants what anyone else wants: true love and the opportunity to have a peaceful life and an existence where he isn't hated and hunted. I have run this adventure many, many times, and it never ceases to amaze me what happens. The players can argue for the better part of an hour trying to decide what they're going to do, and it's not because they want treasure or experience points. It's just because they're invested in this story. Some people feel, well, he's a monster, all monsters need to die. Other people feel sympathy for the creature. I've seen parties side with Victor, side with the creature, and a combination where the party actually ended up not getting into to player-on-player combat, but in the laboratory in the next scene, actually working against each other for different ends. Encounter 2 is a combat encounter and occurs in the laboratory. The creature drops through the skylight and demands his mate. Victor pours acid into the mate's skull, destroying her brain and sending the creature into a blind rage. Whenever I do a combat encounter, I think of the 3 T's from Index Card RPG: timer, threat, and treat. The timer. During the first round of combat, the creature knocks over some Bunsen burners and the lab catches on fire. The characters have D4+2 rounds before the lab explodes. The threat is the creature itself. The difficulty to hit him, 15. And it doesn't matter whether the player characters are 25th level, 5th level, or 1st level. The difficulty is always about 15. So if you've got 25th level characters, you're going to give it maybe a 35 armor class. But what they actually have to roll on the D20 is somewhere around 15, and the creature has as many hit points as all the player characters have put together. The creature has several immunities. Physical attacks do reduce damage. Lightning bolts will heal the creature back to full. Any kind of lightning-based spells instantly heal the creature back to full hit points. Fire-based spells like Fireball, Firebolt, and Flame Arrow or any kind of flaming hands will cause the lab to instantly explode. And you should explain that to the player characters in advance. Say, this is filled with bubbling, flammable liquids. The air itself is filled with flammable gas. The laboratory is also cramped and filled with medical equipment, so the player characters can't swing any sort of large weapons. They get disadvantaged for using anything but their hands. I was asked recently on the DungeonCraft Facebook group, is there any way in 5e to make the characters do anything but the optimal attack? You know, like if they're a sword expert or a bow expert, is there any way not to make them use that? And the answer is, yeah, it's the circumstances you put them in. The surroundings, the environment you can put them in can limit visibility or, in this case, mobility. Now, the treat. If Victor is rescued from his flaming laboratory, he will reward the player characters with gold. And if the creature survives, then Victor will hire them to be his bodyguards for his wedding night, because the creature is going to threaten to show up on his wedding night and get his revenge. I've played this scenario dozens of times, and many times it ends right here in the laboratory with Victor or his creature being immolated and the player characters barely escaping. But in the event that they do make it out and the creature makes it out, there will be a third encounter. This time it's on Victor's wedding night. As the newly married Victor and Elizabeth head toward their honeymoon cottage, the creature takes control of their coach and drives it onto a frozen lake. The ice cracks and the coach falls through, and the player characters have only D4 plus 2 rounds before it sinks and drags the couple to a watery grave. That's the timer. The threat is the creature, who stands between the characters and the sinking coach. Also the ice, which is spiderwebbing and cracking beneath the player characters' feet. Fighting on the ice means the characters have disadvantage to all melee attack rolls. The ice itself will collapse in D4 plus 2 rounds after the fight begins. And then there's the fog, which obscures the creature from view and protects him from ranged attacks and any spells that require the caster to see their target. You see what's happening here? I'm using the terrain and the weather to disrupt the player's path dependency. They can't use their typical feats and spells in combination that they always use. The treat is rescuing Elizabeth. Victor's father is a magistrate. He's very wealthy and he has political influence, so he can give the player characters a lot of connections and a handsome reward, even if Victor doesn't survive. But if the creature does survive, you can always have a sequel. So there are a lot of opportunities with this adventure for it to extend beyond what's written in the module itself. Timers, threats, and treats are a great way to build an encounter. If you're interested in knowing more, I would recommend Index Card RPG. The new Master Edition is coming shortly. I'll include a link to that below. I love final encounters that force the players to have to think, to get out of their comfort zone, to not rely on a typical routine list of feats and moves that are these optimized things that they always do in every single round. By changing the terrain features, adding the timer, thinking about the environment, we force the player characters out of their comfort zone, and they have to be creative if they want to overcome the challenge. If you want to check out my module Frankenstein, it's available for immediate download exclusively on questgivers.com. Questgivers, DMG, DM Scotty, they got tons of cool stuff, including the North Road campaign and more, so check them out. You can also get my other module, Macbeth, as well. You'll also find a link to DungeonCraft on Facebook and Patreon. Tons of cool stuff there, thanks to all the patrons who make DungeonCraft possible, and special thanks to Yappycrafts and the Bard's Forge on Etsy, who provided the Mad Scientist miniature for this episode, which was sculpted by Great Grimoire. Links to their stores below as well. And if you love Frankenstein, you can check out my adaptation of Chapter 5 right here with all my cool miniatures and models. I'll see you soon. May all your rolls be 20s.
Deathbringer again. I once competed with Dr. Frankenstein in a bodybuilding contest, but I think he misunderstood the objective. Click on more DungeonCraft